You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Wood.
And I'm Jennifer Connor.
From Equestrian Businesswomen, and you're listening to Equestrian B2B, the podcast that brings together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and equestrians for conversations about how they build and sustain a successful business.
On today's show, we speak with Katie Allen-Clarke about how life is never truly balanced, her life in marketing, and her new podcast.
Mother to one, horse mom to four, dog mom to two, and wife, Katie Allen-Clarke resides in a small Wiltshire village in the United Kingdom. Director of marketing for one of the world's largest equestrian media brands, Horse & Country, she's seen and been a part of her fair share of marketing do's and don'ts. She also runs a community and podcast, the Equestrian Mums Club, alongside her good friend, Sophie Conway. It's an endeavor committed to bringing equestrian parents across the globe together by the power of shared experiences.
When she's not working on either business, she spends her time riding her Irish draft mare, Lottie, or clearing up the chaos her yearlings create. She believes that storytelling and community are some of the greatest tools any equestrian business can harness. Hey, equestrian businesswomen! It's time to saddle up for the EQBW West Coast Roundup on Friday, November 1st from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. at the Desert Horse Park in Thermal, California. This casual get-together will offer light bites and a free drink, networking and icebreaker activities, as well as raffle prizes. Stay to watch the 6-bar class, ride the mechanical bull, and dance along to the live country band. Buy your tickets today at www.eqbusinesswomen.com.
Hi, Katie. We're really excited to have you here today and be able to talk with you about all sorts of different things. And I'll kind of start with the first question, since you and I know each other from working at Horse & Country, but I don't know a lot about your history with equestrian sport and your working background before you got to Horse & Country. Can you tell us a little about it?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me to start with.
Yeah.
My equestrian background. So I didn't grow up in a horsey family. My mum and dad, in fact, still now are just a little bit like which is the head end and which is the tail end. But at sort of 8, I managed to persuade my dad that I could have some riding lessons. He gave me for my birthday 10 riding lessons, which never stopped. Sorry, Dad. Appreciate that. And I was in riding schools basically until I was about 14. And then over here in the UK, we have like a work experience program that everybody goes through when they're in high school. And you get to pick where you want to go and do work experience. You know, everybody sensible goes into the office with their mum and dad and does nothing other than makes cups of tea or, I don't know, files the paperwork. I decided to go to a point-to-point race yard, which was listed. And I got introduced to a very eccentric lady who bred point horses, hunt horses, and was really, really active in our local sort of like pony club community. It was honestly a pivotal moment in my life because I got used to real horses as opposed to, I was not saying riding school horses aren't real horses, but I got used to real horses with a lot of horsepower and couldn't stop any of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of like quite pivotal for me. And then I was given one of her horses that I was quite fond of. Did loads of sort of like low level eventing and hunting and that sort of stuff over here. Then, as my parents clearly were buzzed that they had to spend more time with horses, I had different ones on loan, throughout my teenage years. But it's never really been something that my family was super into. So it was just, just very low level. And then went to uni, met a man, Still carried on riding through university years, but again, not to a very high level. We have the British Universities and Colleges League here, which I sort of poked around in, but I'm not a very talented rider, guys. I'm just enthusiastic, right? So, yeah.
That counts.
Yeah. Sometimes that takes you further.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest, like I was never uber competitive about it. I just enjoyed hanging out with them. So, yeah. Although I'm definitely not neat enough to be a groom, so just putting that out there. But yeah, that was kind of my first foray into it. And then as an adult, I've bought and sold and loved as many as you can imagine of all different shapes, sizes, and varieties. And now I'm lucky enough to have some at home, which is brilliant. But anyways, the bit in the middle is I met a man, moved to London, and started a career in marketing, mostly actually in retail and e-commerce, which was pretty cool. So I'm used to, again, for my sins, the faster pace of life.
Right.
And, you know, had a couple of big jobs in the city. Got made redundant from one of the big jobs because the whole company got bought. And then, came to Horse and Country as a sort of freelance consultant for a short time and seemed to have been here nearly 5 years. So I'm not quite sure how.
They were.
Yeah, it's all worked out for the good. So that's
And can you tell us a little more about your job there now and what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. So I joined Horse and Country to start with, as I said, sort of like as a freelance kind of content consultant. What I didn't realize at the time was that there wasn't a marketing team. And having built a few in my time, I sort of, after a couple of months, said to Heather, who is CEO here, I said, I kind of feel like I can make this better. I feel like I could have a big plan here. And she was like, okay, cool. And sort of, I don't know whether she believed me or not at the time. And then I presented to her sort of like a 5-year plan for the team and where I thought that would impact the business. And so here I am, director of marketing. I think I've got 9 reports of some shape or variety, which is different from how I started. And yeah, we keep growing, which is fun, especially in equestrian land where sometimes it can be really hard, to keep the momentum. But the team's growing. We've got some really good characters around, and yeah, we all have a specialism, which is good. I love that.
Yeah, I feel like marketing has expanded so much over the years as well to encompass much more than traditional marketing, and you need people who specialize in those different aspects.
I think, and that is really one of the key parts of the team that I've built here, is that we can't all be generalists in everything. Like all of us are kind of like hands on deck people. If there's a crisis, we're all helping. Like there's no issue there. But to really continue to gain traction, you need people that are really good at a couple of things, not just really good at everything and happy to help, because otherwise it all just becomes a bit samey. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I look around in the equestrian space and I think I'm yet to be wowed by something I've seen recently in terms of marketing or advertising. And I mean that from the greatest respect, and the fact sometimes I look at our campaigns and I think they could have been better. But, it's I do think you need a variety of skill sets within your team to really make campaigns that speak to people, really.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think so much noise going on these days and so much content. You really have to do something different to stand out.
Yeah. And you have to, I think with the equestrian space as well, I was just speaking to team members this morning, you have to deeply know about that bit of content or that bit of product that you're selling to people. You have to really understand the ins and outs of it, because if you don't, equestrians will see through that immediately.
Right.
Yeah, it's a unique position to be in, where you not only have to know, like, technically how to put together a reel or, do something digitally, but then also to know so deeply into the equine industry so that people do take you seriously. It's different, especially like from when I went to school for marketing and Jen and I went together. It's very different. It's evolved so much, and there's so many more moving parts now, I feel like.
Yeah.
I'm actually hiring at the moment for one of our positions. We've got somebody that's been in the team for a while. She's amazing, but she's moving on to, find something that fits her lifestyle a bit better than what we do right now. But I'm hiring for her role, and the role is a paid media marketing manager. So that covers, Meta ads, Google ads, display advertising, print advertising, sort of affiliate partnerships, that sort of stuff. So it's real performance side of marketing. And to actually find somebody with performance marketing expertise, but also equestrian knowledge, is a real golden nugget. So yeah. I kind of feel like, when I'm interviewing for people that come into that role particular, it feels hardcore, as opposed to some of the other roles that I would interview for, where you do need a skill set, but I can vibe check you pretty quickly. Yeah. This role is more difficult, but hey, it's part of the fun of life.
Well, and you know what? Maybe there's somebody that's listening to this who will have a light bulb moment and say, you know what? I'm going to pivot in what I'm doing in school or where I'm heading, and make that sort of a specialty for themselves and understanding the horse industry. Because I think so many times as equestrians, we get in the barn and we don't want to sit in front of a computer, and we don't do those skills that are needed because we're like playing with the horses, right?
Yeah, I would definitely say, and this is a piece of unsolicited advice for people, if you want to get into equestrian marketing, is there are so many people that are out there that will do all of the things. Pick your things, people, and go after the channels that interest you. Go after the things that you're passionate about, and make that, run hard at it. Because I'm telling you now, there are so many people out there that are generalists, and that unfortunately doesn't stand you out in a sea of candidates. Help yourself, find the areas that you're passionate about, and run at them.
Yes. And gain all the knowledge you can, and stay up to date with everything that's happening.
I think that's the other thing as well, finding people that are interested in other industries as well, and taking that knowledge back to their own jobs.
For sure.
I always say to people, in my team, retail is still my first passion. I really enjoy bringing what I know from retail back into a subscription service. But find campaigns out there that have worked for other companies and industries, and try and bring that learning back, because
absolutely
the equestrian sector is really good at not doing that.
Yes.
And it shows.
Yeah. And it's funny, with all the money that's in the industry, nobody puts money into marketing in this industry, or very few, I should say. And one of the best things you can do is look at what other sports or businesses are doing well and try and recreate it the best you can. And it will make a difference. I've seen people who have done that. They've gone out and, taken ideas and inspiration and made it happen in the equestrian side, but it's not easy.
No, but I feel like even the PBR right now, the professional bull riding, they have figured out that they need to change and evolve and appeal to different audiences. And they've completely changed, where it used to be just one bull rider bucking on a team. Now they've got it as a team sport, and they travel to different places, the different cities, and they compete against each other as a team. And I know NASCAR is doing some of that and dabbling with that. And I think that a little bit probably has to do with sports betting here in the US and how we've embraced that. But they're looking at other models and they're constantly trying to evolve, which good for them, because I think you'll get left in the dust. And I very much feel like racing is in that predicament right now here in the US, as if they don't start changing and evolving and looking at how to do things maybe a little differently, they're going to be left in the dust.
Mm-hmm.
That's super interesting. I think also one of the other things that's been hot on my mind at the moment when I'm speaking to my team members is don't be afraid to have a voice as well, and don't be afraid to have an opinion on things, because I also think that that's another area within this particular industry where people get scared to have an opinion on something, and so they don't have one at all, which means actually they don't really stand for anything within the space. Mm-hmm. I think Horse and Country, actually, we've been guilty of that for a really long time. And I was speaking to you, Jan, about this on a call the other day. I think that, if we don't have an opinion, we don't have a standpoint, it just makes us kind of like a bit flimsy, a bit wishy-washy. I don't know whether that's a US phrase or not. Sorry. Yes. But you've got to have an opinion actually to get through to an audience. That is, that's critical.
Yeah, we're always talking about being authentic, and in most times it's referring to social media and the content that you're putting up there. But I think as a cultural ethos for a company as well, which we've discussed too, knowing what you stand for and what you believe in and what you're going to talk about, and like you say, have an opinion about, is important, because so many people and purchasers these days want who they're buying from to stand for something, right? Whether it's, for the environment or doing the best for their customers, or, anything related to animals and animal welfare, and putting that first. So yeah, I agree with you.
As a brand, what do you have a responsibility to do? For us, and I was talking about this the other day to people, I think as a brand, Horse and Country is a media platform, right? So we want to be showing content that is good for horse sport, that is good for horse welfare, particularly in the environment that we're in right now, where, our social license to operate is under such scrutiny from the general public. We actually need to be proactive, not reactive, proactive in how we are approaching the content that we're showing, and how we're selecting contributors to that content, how we're selecting partners to that content. It goes wider than just saying, I don't know, I don't agree with breaking horses at 2 or whatever it happens to be. It's a lot wider than that.
For sure. And do you see a significant difference, in marketing for the UK and Europe versus the US? We've talked about horsey and non-horsey, but what do you see culturally in between those?
Could they be more polar opposite? I don't know. Yeah.
Like when we're talking, I was like, no, don't do that. Not in the US, you can't do that.
Yeah, there is definitely nuances to each territory. And for people that aren't aware of Horse and Country, we operate globally, but our kind of key territories are UK, Europe, so Netherlands, Germany, that sort of area. Australia as well. We have some presence in the Nordics, so Scandinavia, and we also obviously have a business in the US. So keeping on top of the messaging for all of those territories is hard work, right? Yeah. And sometimes we don't get it right, and I'll be the first to admit that. But in coming back to your question, it's about knowing the people that you really want to target in those territories. So in the UK, we have far more grassroots. We have a bigger blur between grassroots to pro riders to elite riders. when I say a blur, I mean there are people that are dabbling in all of those things in all households.
Right.
And there's a lot more backyard sport as well.
Yes.
I have 2 horses sat in effectively my back garden at home.
Right.
And I also have a few more down the road. It's very accessible in quite a lot of ways in the UK. So you find that people do a mixture of disciplines as well. So, I'm interested in dressage. Now I've got these 2 youngsters. I'm thinking, maybe I'll do a bit of showing in hand.
Yeah.
I mean, not that that's my skill set, but I am interested in watching show jumping, but you don't get that sort of same buy-in cross discipline, I don't think, in some of the other territories. If you're interested in hunter jumper in the US, I'm not going to persuade you to watch the dressage. That's just that's not a thing that you're going to be interested in quite the same way. And also it's just the commercialism for you guys over there, like the scale at which things happen it takes a while to get your head around, doesn't it?
Yeah. Everything's bigger.
Yeah, everything is bigger and everything is more of an event rather than a cluster of people doing the same thing.
Right.
It's the scale is massive. I think also as well the way in which we speak to people across territories is really different. So in the UK we suggest, and then we sell. I don't know whether I'm allowed to say my famous phrase on your podcast, Jen, but you can edit it out if it not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always say to my team, you don't show your tits on the first date. There you go. not in the UK. Or if you do, that's up to you. But no judgment. Yeah. In the US, you are so much more blunt, you guys. This is what you can expect. This is where it is. Go get it. Yeah. And Australia is somewhere in the middle. I think Europe is pretty more literal as well, actually.
Especially, the Germans and the Dutch, I think, are extremely straightforward.
Yeah, the Dutch don't take no messing. So
right.
It's, they're a lot more literal. In the UK, we're a lot more frilly around the edges, I think, in how we speak.
That's funny. You know what I was thinking about when you were talking, how the sport in the UK maybe is, or the people that follow are a lot more grassroots, but don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people in the US at the grassroots level, I think, but I also think we have the difference of having Western sport in the US, which that's where I think there's a huge number of grassroots people, like people who have horses in their backyard are probably more likely to just have a Western saddle on their horse and go trail riding and that sort of thing, rather than jumping around or fox hunting or whatever it may be.
I think it's in your blood differently,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The way the country has grown and the way horses were used in the country was a lot different.
Yeah, and I think for us, obviously, with such a smaller landscape to cross,
right,
we haven't relied on horsepower as much for as long, I guess. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how all these little territories approach things differently, but I find it fun, if a little stressful.
Yes, agree.
I know we've talked to somebody before who said that it's a lot cheaper to keep horses in Europe than it is over here in the US, like as far as breeding and bringing along young horses. I guess I want to know, do you think that that's what helps grow the sport so much over there? Because I feel like there are so many more people that are invested and interested in equestrian sport in all of Europe versus in the US. Like if you watch classes, from Europe, you'll see the stands are filled and they're like everyday fans. They're not just equestrians, but I feel like in the US, it's a lot of equestrian people coming to equestrian sports. And that's it.
Right.
We're not reaching outside of the equine industry to draw in from the general public.
That's really interesting because I feel like,
Except for a handful of events.
Yeah.
Eventing.
yeah, I would say eventing actually and show jumping, because
The
show
cross-country
jumping,
days.
yeah, like the cross country days are big. Like, so I went to badminton earlier this year, and it is so close to my home. It's like 20 minutes away, and it is like the amount of traffic that event drives is wild. And I was just waiting for some stands somewhere and overhearing people chatting like, "Oh, can you tell me how cross country scoring works? I've never done this before." And you just wouldn't get that like in any other event, really. I'm really sorry to the dressage fans in the UK, but it's not the same pull. Okay, it really isn't. Show jumping, I think, is maybe a bit different because, again, there are sort of key calendar events that would be more accessible for people. So obviously you have things like the Global Champions League, whatever, in London, and therefore it's used as a ticketed box event for people to take clients to, for people to just, it's in the city, so people can wander in, not precariously or scarily. They are ticketed. But it's again slightly more accessible, but also flashy. It looks fun. They make a big deal of it. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but I kind of feel like there are some key calendar events that will pull people in, but on the whole, I also kind of feel like the equestrian industry doesn't do a very good job at making it dummy friendly, For the average,
Could we more complicated scoring? I don't.
Oh, I mean, even let's face it, look at our lingo, right? I mean, it's mares and geldings, and people are like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Right. And down to the simplest things that we take for granted because it's just part of us and part of our lingo. But I've recently had the experience of talking to our new CEO who knows nothing about horses and taking him around Saratoga and going to the racetrack and showing a rehab center and just having to explain those little things that we take for granted every day about a horse, the difference in standard breds and thoroughbreds and the difference in the track surface and the turf course and what that means. So
I married a non-equestrian man. This man, to his credit, is learning the lingo. It's only taken 15, 16 years. But, he's picking up on those things. And he can, in fact, put a head collar on now, guys, which is, big deal. But no, I do think that we make it really hard for people to get into it.
I don't think, the jumpers you can kind of make sense of in terms of you knock a rail down, that's bad. But when you watch other sports like golf, the ball goes in the hole, yay. Like basketball, the ball goes through the hoop, yay. It's not as it's not as complicated to understand other sports, even if you're not a super fan and really involved in it.
So that
you can get it.
Yeah, that's one of the things at H&C we've been talking about quite a lot, actually, is how we make some of the sports that we show more spectator friendly. So things like dressage or showing. In the UK, we have a lot of showing, which I don't know whether you guys have in quite the same way, to be honest, but showing is big here. And, the judges' scores are so subjective. They're not you've got a rail down, boo-hoo. It's how was that partnership? How was that way of going? Do we feel like they exercised that move properly? Do they feel like actually that was a good standard of breed? I don't know. So how can we get commentators or surrounding information which makes I guess, our streams more valuable to people, but also that we can attract people that aren't just showing buffs or dressage notes.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to the hunters and the equitation in the US when we're talking about English sport. And, if we think show jumping is complicated, then good luck explaining hunters and equitation and how they get the scores that they get, because it's absolutely, it's like dressage. It's extremely subjective.
Even Western pleasure. I was watching clips from Quarter Horse Congress the other day, and I was like,
even as a horse person, you're like, I don't get the difference.
Yeah.
It takes a trained eye, right? Like a really trained eye. And even now, like, I'm probably the first person to admit when I don't know what I'm watching. I'm like, Jen, would you help with this, please? I don't know what this is. But again, that actually brings me on to another point, which is, I think people are sometimes within our industry scared to ask if they don't know what they're watching or what they're looking at. It's just kind of, I'll brush it over where my knowledge is patchy. Actually, I don't think you can do that. You should just be asking.
No. Yeah. And because what you're putting out there, like you said before, if you're in marketing and you're marketing dressage and you don't know about dressage and you're putting out terrible pictures of dressage horses, it's going to come back to you, right? You can't be putting out, pictures of, especially now, horses behind the vertical or horses with their mouth open, or, in dressage, it's the pretty picture of the horse and the rider together, and not, an awkward angle where they're lifting their leg weird. It's like, and you have to learn, and that's, I've learned so much about dressage since I started working at dressage events, and feel like I have a passing knowledge of it, but people will notice if you don't know what you're doing.
100%. And also it's the, like I was saying previously about people on your team having different specialisms in marketing. For us, it's about specialisms in discipline as well. Yeah. So, we've got someone on my team who is the dressage person that we go to. And that sounds like a lot of responsibility, but she does this day in, day out. This is her absolute passion. And if she has got an inkling that something's not quite right, then we look at it again and again and again. If we're still not convinced, then we've got good enough partnerships with our governing bodies generally to be like, hey, do you think this is a bit awkward? And they will either say yes or no. So that also helps as well.
For sure.
And likewise,
contacts and using them.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they want the sport to be put in the best light as well. Anybody who loves the sport is going to be willing to help you and explain what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. This even leaks over into my job, right? Because I sell pharmaceuticals, and going in, there are certain products that I can sell to certain portions, but I'm not going to go to the racetrack and talk to them about the breeding products that I have to sell. Right? Like, I'm not going to walk into that kind of area and be like, oh yes, I have a drug for ovulation. They may use it occasionally to help a mare get out of heat, but like, that's not my main focus, right? You have to read the room, and you have to know what products you have. And I think that even in marketing, you can almost think of it a little bit like sales, right? Because you have the product that you're looking to get out there.
Our biggest job as marketers and within this industry is to find the problem. It is to find the problem and uncover it and unearth it and fix it. It is not to make it look pretty. And I think so. It really irks me. Somebody once referred to our team as the colouring in department. And the biggest mistake that this gentleman could have made. We are not the colouring in department at all. If we've made something look pretty, we've taken away from the job. Like, actually what we do is we put the business needs alongside what the customer really wants, and we should make that come together. So we touch every part of the business as marketers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like every single part of the business. But if we've made it look pretty, we've not done our job. Yeah.
I tell people young younger people who want to get into, PR and marketing, especially at horse show events, like who are the most valuable people that you need to make connections with at the horse show? The in-gate guys, the horse show manager, the stewards, like all the people behind the scenes that you need to have connections with in order to do your job the best that you can, so that you have the correct information, you're getting it out to whether the exhibitors or the public the best way possible. And, Jen and I are always talking about connections and networking, and that's a huge thing to have at horse shows, are those really good relationships with all those people running the event.
Yeah.
So that you know what you're talking about and you have the correct information.
Yeah, and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like you are not going to know everything that these people around you know. Don't try and fob it off like you because you don't. You're not walking in their shoes. But if you can lend a hand and see where the needs are, you're even closer to fixing the problem, and unearthing what's ugly.
Yeah. So kind of switching gears here and moving from, I guess, a little more professional to personal. You have a podcast as well called Equestrian Mums Podcast. And we wanted to know, I obviously know why you started it a little bit, but can you tell us what the inspiration was for that?
Yes. And I will not depress anyone, I promise. So I am, at the time of recording this, I have a 14-month-old son. And as anybody that knew me prior to that would probably say, I was not expecting children. That was not high on my priority list at all. And bless him, he's going to hear all of this anyway. I'm completely open with this. But I actually didn't find out that I was pregnant until 6.5 months pregnant. I didn't think I could have children, and I actually wasn't keen on the idea either. But so when I found out, it was actually quite a shock to the system, shall we say. I think I thought I'd just been eating a bit too much pasta. That I was wrong. And anyway, so yeah, I was kind of mentally not in a very good place after that shock. Obviously, baby comes, he's healthy, he's a very happy little person. But I just felt like I'd built up my entire world to be around horses. And my professional life, my personal life, like everything had been centered around being an equestrian. And I was so scared that I was going to lose it all as soon as he came along. And I wasn't really ready to give up on that. But luckily I also had a friend and colleague that also works for Horse and Country. She's the director of sales in Europe. Her name is Sophie, and she'd had a little girl the year before called Olive. And as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I was asking her all of the questions, like how do you balance this? What am I going to do when this happens? Is this okay? She was kind of my sounding board to horsey mum life. And sort of, I guess, maybe 6 weeks in to having a child, I was sat there in a feed in the middle of the night thinking, I can't give up my life. I can't give up everything that I've worked for. Other people must do this. How do they make it work? And so sort of the idea came into my mind that, okay, is there a community for this sort of stuff? Like, do people have, like somewhere they can ask questions and not feel like an idiot? And I couldn't find anything of real substantive, volume. There's a couple of bits on the Horse and Hound website. There's a couple of, articles maybe on the Plaid Horse or something, but I just couldn't find like a center of truth for all of the questions that I wanted to ask. And I also knew that the people that would be on those forums, it was very limited. Do you know what I mean? The experiences were very limited. And so I thought, right, I'll make a community of my own. Maybe if it's just me talking around in there, it's just me, but hey ho, we'll see how it goes. So Sophie and I started this community in October of last year. And then I kind of naturally, we just went, how can we kind of expedite this, make this more interactive? How can we get other people's stories on here? Because at the end of the day, it's not about Sophie and I and our experiences. We're trying to get all the nuggets from everybody else to make our lives easier as well. So yeah, we started a podcast, no idea what we were doing, not a clue, didn't know how to record it, didn't know what programs to use, didn't know how much to script it, didn't know what we were doing at all. Kind of just fumbled along. And I've spoken to some really seriously cool people that have given us lots of inspo, lots of advice, and kind of helped soothe the pain, I guess, of the journey.
And the transition. Yeah.
Yeah. And that sounds like a really selfish way of saying I needed help. So I started something to help myself. But in the process, we've helped so many other people as well. And that's the key driver for this. Like we're not in it for fame and glory,
right?
Because if we were, we'd done a really good job at not doing that. But we've we're in this to give people some solidarity, somewhere to turn to, somewhere to ask the questions that they're scared to ask. Be positive but also realistic. Like some days it's not a good day. Some days parenting and horses is not a good combination, right? But we want to support people through the transition, I guess, of becoming a parent, staying a parent.
That's the thing, right? It's a lifelong, you're stuck with them forever, so you better, and all the different seasons and phases of being a parent and still having horses in your life.
It's a life sentence, but it's something that so many people are going through. And I'm just so shocked at some of the stories that I've heard so far along the way, shocked and delighted in the fact that everyone just thinks it's normal, so they don't talk about it, like some of the really ugly moments, but delighted in the fact that we can pass amazing tips on, we can pass amazing, like, people achieving their goals anyway on. It's kind of real special. It makes me kind of a little bit tingly, goosebumpy when I think about it.
That's awesome.
It is.
And what kind of plans for growth do you have with the podcast?
That's an interesting question. I don't do many things by halves, sadly. Much to my husband's distaste. We don't want to stop at podcasting because we know that actually what people want is community. So for us, it's how do we bring community together? Not just, in terms of audio waves and listening to my sultry voice on Spotify. Like, how do we actually create meaningful moments for people that show them that they're not alone or deal with problems that they have? So our next sort of venture is definitely in the event space. So I don't know when this will be released, but maybe we'll have a little bit more to share around that. We want to have people come with horses and children, put it that way. And we will be assisting with both. That's as much as I can say there. We want to put on more useful podcasts as well in terms of like how-tos and, again, solving problems for people, not just chatting about life experience in general. We've got some plans on for that as well. And also, we've got some really, really, really interesting kind of like plans to expand our format, not just to audio. So
yeah.
I'll leave that there. But
do you
Cool.
guys do your own editing, or do you have a producer?
so we do have an editor. Her name is T, and she is fabulous because she's also a photographer and videographer as well. Love you, T. Thank you so much. And she has to listen to us on a too regular basis, I'm sure. So she does our edits, but I guess I do most of the production in terms of researching questions, that sort of stuff, getting guests on or not. And yeah, we make it work. I can edit as well, but I try not to do too much of that myself because that's not my gift, you know. I can do it, but it's not my thing. So
Totally.
how does it work for you guys?
We work with Horse Radio Network. So they have the whole producing team, luckily, because Jen and I both recognize that is not our skill set. And we don't have time to do it. We barely have time to record 2 episodes a month. So, yeah, it's very helpful to have a team behind you in that regard.
It's just such a chore to have to listen to the edited version before it goes up for everybody to listen to, because I hate listening to my own voice.
Yeah, and there's definitely moments where I'm like, I should not have said that.
I've been bleeped out of the show before.
There's still time for me to be bleeped out too. Don't worry, Jen. So yeah, that's kind of how we work it at the moment. There's more fun schemes, plots, and plans, but I'm still balancing this on the side of the day job, you know, like you guys are. Still balancing my own horses, still balancing my son. And I have a husband that's hardly ever here, so it's, you know, it's fun.
Lots of moving parts. Totally understand. And our next question is, how are you able to balance doing all of that?
You know, I've been brewing on this question all night. How do I balance it? Well, the honest answer is I don't.
Yep.
I really
exactly.
I don't.
Yeah.
Some days it's all about the job. Some days it's all about my son. Some days it's all about my horses because one of them's done something stupid.
Yeah.
Some days I just totally focus on what I want to get out of the podcast. It's as simple as that. I don't have a formula, because if I did, I'd be selling it.
Right.
But I think the thing that works for me is, well, there's a couple of things that work for me, is knowing what percentage you're at of those projects in any one day. So if I know I've got to go all in on work that day, I can't feel any guilt about the other things. I just can't. Like, I have to give myself grace that this is a working day. This is my focus.
Totally.
You know, some days it will be more of a mixture, but like, what is the big priority for that day, I guess, that I need to figure out and fix. The second thing is, again, if I'm, who can I delegate to? Who can I delegate to in my life?
That's not easy either.
And that isn't easy. There's definitely a lot of times where I felt a lot of guilt for delegating like professional chores back out to the team or to other team members, or basically saying this isn't a priority, sorry, I'm not doing it. You know, there's a lot of guilt around that. There's a lot of guilt around saying to my husband, sorry, you have to be back by this time today, otherwise I can't actually do my job. Or my horse needs medical attention, you need to be back here. And also, like, we have fantastic childcare, like really fantastic childcare that makes my world turn. Emma, if you're listening to this, I love you. So yeah, really it's about delegating back out where you can, and just knowing that I'm never going to be 100% at anything ever again. Really.
Yeah. And being okay with that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I am okay with it, but
no.
You know, you've got no choice. This is where it's at.
Would you say that's your biggest struggle?
Yes. As somebody who famously burnt themselves out during professional life not too long ago, I think that is definitely my biggest struggle, because when I'm passionate about something, I'm going hell for leather at that thing. And now that I'm a parent, I really struggle with that, because I can't. He's the priority, and he needs to live and eat and have a good life, and not just be centered around mine. It's hard work.
Yeah.
What's been easier than you expected?
Oh, that's an interesting question. What's been easier than expected? The caring bit, the actual like day to day. Once you've had horses, there is nothing a child will throw at you that you think, I can't deal with this.
Totally. I'm always shocked at horse moms who get grossed out by like poopy diapers and stuff. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you've been around manure your whole life and you can't handle a gross diaper?
No. I know. Or cuts, like cuts, oozing cuts and abscesses in a foot. I mean, is there any worse smell than an abscess coming out of a foot? Like,
no. So no, I think the caring bit comes. It's just, part and parcel, isn't it? Once you've had animals, particularly horses, dogs, and that sort of stuff, you're just used to the gross and used to the grind as well. Like that is just something you get. But I think the mental side of it is a lot harder.
Agreed. Yes. Physically, maybe not as hard as day-to-day care of horses, but mentally. And I think for the most part with horses, there's somebody saying, this is how you do it, or this is how it's done, or this is how you take care of it. And with kids, you're just left to your own devices. Like,
I think it's one of the other great similarities about horses and kids is, and we talked about this on the podcast actually, is they're all individual. There is no right or wrong answer. Like you just roll with what you've got. You play the hand as you see it come up, and you just have to go with it. And you don't know whether you've made the right or wrong decision until it's happened, right? But you just got to keep going. That's it. That's my only advice.
Put your head down and power through.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been such fun talking to you about all of these different topics. And at the end of each episode, we ask the same 4 questions to each guest, and Connor starts with the first.
What is one action that women can take to make a big difference in their lives?
This is supposed to be quick fire, right?
We say that, and then people talk for like 5 minutes on each question.
One action. I would say put your own life mask on first. That is it. That is my suggestion. If you are not taking care of yourself in whatever way that happens to be on any given hour, day, whatever, you are going to be useless to everybody else. And you can't do the next project, the next job, the next dream, the next task without taking care of your needs right now. So if you need to have a glass of water, have a glass of water. If you need to take a walk outside, you do that. If you need another meal with some green vegetables in, you do that. But yeah, take care of yourself.
And what's the best habit that keeps you motivated personally?
Interspersing work, which I'm not very good at, with fun tasks, with fun, not even tasks, with fun bits in your life. I am really, really lucky that I work from home most of the time when I'm not in London, and being able to walk outside, touch the horses for 5 minutes, or play with the dogs, or even actually just, see my son and give him a little hug or whatever, doing things that aren't the grind, or interspersing the grind with, bits that keep your heart full. That's really important. Otherwise you don't get the inspiration from anywhere, and the motivation just dies. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. What are you doing all this for? What are you working so hard for?
Yeah, exactly.
What's your favorite horse movie?
Black Beauty, always. It's a very like British thing, you know.
Yes.
It's an institution.
And who would you recommend to be a future guest on this podcast?
Oh, there's so many people, but I do think you should maybe get some Brit presenters on. So like the Jenny Rudolls of this world, who has recently gone over to Canada, or who has featured a lot on Horse and Country, or Nicole Brown. They are both, she's an eventing commentator and presenter over in the UK. They are both, for different reasons, super fun, equestrian business women as well as mums. And I think that's the point, isn't it? You want to get business advice from people on this podcast as well as fun life stories. And I think they're bossing it. So they
cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's great.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, Equestrian B2B podcast listeners. Ready to level up your biz?
Ride Every Stride specializes in tailoring brand identities for equestrian businesses. From logo development, essential stable accessories, and custom product branding to exclusive awards, VIP event must-haves, and chic apparel, they've got you covered.
Visit rideeverystride.com. Use code B2B15, that's B2B15, at checkout for an exclusive 15% discount.
Elevate your brand with Ride Every Stride, supporting women in business and equestrian excellence.
Katie's so fun. I love talking with her, and she's always extremely to the point, which I love. And what I really connected with was her story about why she started her podcast, because I thought it sounded almost exactly the same as why I started Equestrian Businesswoman.
Right.
And what she's looking to do is what we're aiming to do in finding a community. So that was really cool to hear.
Yeah, it's awesome, because I think that's what all of us want is community. It's so important for us to kind of like be there for each other and create that environment. And whether it's talking about business or talking about kids, I think that it's really important to have that support, to be able to like have a safe space to talk about those kind of things.
Totally.
I loved, my favorite part was when she said she goes hell for leather. Yeah. I don't know what that means, but that's amazing. I want to have like a little Rolodex of sayings like that.
A list of
yes.
Britishisms. Yeah.
Yes, that was amazing. That was so good. And also, I enjoyed her story about and how candid she was about, like not really wanting children and then finding out she was pregnant. And I have a friend over here who had a similar situation, who had no intentions of ever having a child. And then she got pregnant and she kept riding all through her pregnancy. And she was like, yeah, you know what? Like, here I am flopping along, 8 months pregnant. She's like, his head was probably whamming on the saddle. She's like, he was either going to come out perfect or not. At that point, what are you going to
do? Yeah, it's, I love having different people's experiences and being able to share them, because I think we have a lot more in common with each other than we ever think we do. And I think, as things change in the world, and as we start to talk more about things that no one ever used to talk about, whether it's mental health or not having kids or not wanting kids and other topics, it's so great to, it just all goes back to connecting and hearing other people's experiences, whether you can relate to them or not. It's good to know about them.
Right. Oh no, I get out. Listen, I don't have kids. I don't have kids, but I get a lot out of the stories that you guys talk about. And I admire everybody who's doing it. And, maybe not balancing it, but are out there in the trenches, making it work and doing what you can for your kids. And I admire that about you, about all my friends who have kids who are doing it, and it's so difficult. It's so difficult. It makes me not want to do it.
But you are a great aunt. I'll tell you that.
And I like being the fun haver aunt. That's my favorite role.
Yep.
So anyway, but yeah, I mean, it's great that we can talk about those kind of things because it's stuff that we never share
right
before. So,
and her, her marketing background and her expertise is awesome. I think it was cool to talk more about that and what she has experienced and what she sees in the different markets that they deal with. That was cool to talk more about that because, I think we've mentioned it here and there or talked about business more in different markets, but not necessarily marketing in different parts of the world. So that was really, I think that could be really useful for people.
And I also like when we get to peel back the curtain on other countries' perspective of US and then also what goes on in their country. Because I have this vision that I feel like in our conversation she really didn't, not that she didn't feel the same way, but she was surprised that I would say, I think that, Europe has such a following of equestrian sport different than the US. And I guess that's just the perception I have from watching from afar and seeing highlighted events. But it sounds like
huge crowds that they get at horse shows.
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like their equestrian top level riders are revered as like real sports athletes, where in the US it's unfortunate, but I don't feel like we give enough credit to our equestrians as being sports athletes like our football players and our baseball players. And so I always had this image that it was just so much more well embraced over there. And I think that was so surprising to her that I have that view.
No, I have it too. So yeah, it's learning other people's perspective and how they see things, I think can help adjust what you're doing in your own world. So
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, it was a super fun conversation. I just really enjoyed her and laughing and all of the British sayings that came out of it. I'll have to listen and then pick them all out and put them in my Rolodex so that I can use them, probably inappropriately, but I'll use them.
Please do. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, that'll be from now on. That's what I'm going to do. Try and throw something into every one of our podcasts that's like a Britishism.
Yeah.
And our guests are going to be like, what is she talking about?
In your New York accent.
Yeah. For sure. I'm going to keep all you listeners on your toes. See if you can figure out what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And I think it's, it's good to be, she was a great one to kind of come back to, between traveling and hurricanes and life. We have been a little delayed in getting this episode out, but we've been working at it. We've been trying.
And I'm glad you're safe from the hurricane.
Yeah. Gosh, we got lucky. It's horrible to see everything that's happened.
Yeah, my thoughts are with everybody down in Wellington that had, it was so scary for them with that terrible tornado down there.
Yeah.
I saw a map and the picture of it, it went really far.
It went like 30 or 40 miles.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. It was like, what was it, a mile or two across? It was huge.
Yeah, it's crazy. Madness. And poor people who fled the West Coast and then they went there to have a tornado. Oh, Mother Nature is I'm not a fan of right now.
No, well, she's not happy with us.
Clearly, she's not happy with us. And then she was 35 degrees here this morning. So winter is coming and I'm not happy about it.
Oh, time to come to Florida.
Yeah. So you know what? We actually have to
Once the hurricane season's over.
Yeah, once your hurricanes are done. Yeah. No, I actually want to end this episode so that I can go put my heat on because the heat blows and it makes too much noise to podcast with. So we're going to end with that.
Yep.
Find the links to today's guest and the show notes at www.eqbusinesswomen.com. Equestrian B2B is out twice a month on the 1st and the 15th.
You can find out more at eqbusinesswomen.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Find Equestrian B2B wherever you get your podcasts and be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review. You can have all 20 plus shows of the Horse Radio Network with you wherever you go with their free app for iPhone and Android. Go to your app store and search Horse Radio Network.
Now go find the problem and fix it.